Well, hello, Yolanta. We're back together again, me and the holistic pharmacist. So it's an absolute pleasure to be connecting with you again, especially because we're going to be talking about food intolerance testing and how beneficial that can be, particularly to all women and all men, but particularly for me as a menopausal woman, because one of the things that we've come to realize is that we change as we grow older. And here I'm talking about growing older, which is a privilege, and aging is a choice. Because again, for me, choosing the foods that I eat, what I put on my skin, how I look after myself, are all going to support the aging process. And I'm a real believer that we can, influence and support how we age, the vitality we have, and our well-being. So that's my really long introduction. How have things been with you since the last time we spoke?
Really good, thank you, Mari. Yes, amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's great because one of the things, Yolanta and I, as always, you always have that little off-air conversation. We were both talking about the importance of knowing your numbers, as Oprah Winfrey always says. And so we will be doing a follow-up episode because I'm going to be doing my Dutch test, which is the gold standard in hormone testing, and who better to do it with than Yolanta. And you never know, we might even get a man's perspective on the Dutch test one day for an interview. So I've obviously just had my food intolerance test done, and I did it about 3 weeks ago now. Well, I had my results back about 3 weeks ago. Maybe it would be really beneficial for you to explain what it is and why it's a good thing or useful for some people to have.
Of course, Mari.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I thought what I'd do first is maybe explain a little bit about the different sort of adverse food reactions that people can experience. So you can get adverse food reactions that are obviously a proper food allergy. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. So these are your, peanuts, shellfish, things where you get immediate adverse reactions that can be life-threatening.
Yeah.
So in this talk, we're really going to be discussing a food intolerance or sensitivity. Now, some of them can be mediated by our immune system and some not. Some can be due to an enzyme deficiency, such as a lactose intolerance, where someone can be deficient in the enzyme lactase, and so they can't break down milk products, dairy. But lactose is also found in so many other things like medications, and you can get a lot of gut symptoms from that, and really quite bad diarrhea. And then you can have a histamine intolerance. And again, this is where the body just can't get rid of the excess histamine. You can get, some foods are very, very rich in histamine, especially fermented foods. And people who perhaps, migraine sufferers, people who have a lot of cold-like symptoms, that they don't know that, why have I got another cold again? Panic attacks, if someone is experiencing a lot of hives or other skin issues, that could be a histamine intolerance. Then we can get things like, there's another one called a tyramine intolerance. Now this is quite a complex one. But really, for any migraine sufferers, if I get a client, it's something I always just have to explore, whether it could be a tyramine intolerance. You can have an intolerance to sulfites.
So can I just go back to the tyramine? Would I know them as amines? Is that things that are like in avocado and...
Yes, aged cheeses. Again, a lot of
But is that
fermented.
amines? So I've known them as amines, but yeah, because I was aware of that, because quite often they're in what were classed as healthy foods, aren't they?
Yes.
And am I right in understanding that for some, and I'm talking about women here because as you know, I'm really interested in the female cycle, that for some women around ovulation can find that they get a tyramine response that they might not necessarily get at other times of the month as the estrogen and the progesterone switch over.
Absolutely. And again, you know, these healthy foods. So we're talking about avocados,
Yeah.
bananas,
Yeah.
raspberries,
Yes.
plums, tomatoes, you know,
All the things
broad beans,
yeah.
all the things that you'd think, you know, are healthy. And the interesting thing with a tyramine intolerance is, you know, if anyone suspects this, you really need to work with a nutritionist, because if it's a severe tyramine intolerance, when you start eliminating those foods, you can get quite nasty withdrawal symptoms for the first week.
And would that trigger more migraines?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so just going back, so we can get a sulfite intolerance, you know, and sulfites are found in dried fruit, you know, apricots, you know, when you read the packaging, a lot of alcoholic drinks, and these can trigger asthma-like symptoms, so breathing difficulties, you know, runny nose as well, cold-like symptoms. Then we get an intolerance to food additives, and especially this is important, you know, for children, because children can be really affected by these because their bodies just cannot detox all these additives. And then we can get what is known as a benzoate buildup in our bodies. Now, this can occur as we age, and especially for women, because benzoate it's a preservative. Yes, it's found in some foods, but it's also found in toiletries, hair dyes. And the benzoate part can really infiltrate the mitochondria, our energy producing cells. So for example, I had a client who was experiencing a lot of fatigue, like, you know, literally couldn't get out of bed, and we ran some bloods, and this showed up that there was a buildup of benzoate in her mitochondria.
Could it how quickly could it happen? Because again, you know, just for complete transparency, and you know, I don't know when people are watching this, but I've literally had my hair coloured for the first time in 2 or 3 years, you know, to the extent that it was on the crown of my head. And you know, I love it, but I felt literally from the next day headachy and zero energy. Can it be that instant?
I don't know.
That's the answer. Individuality?
I think it depends on the sort of lifestyle we have led up to that point, because if our cells are really challenged and taxed in trying to detox various chemicals that we either ingest, apply, or breathe in over years and years and years and years and years, then of course when, you know, and there's some potent chemicals, it's not just benzoate in hair dyes, it could be another sort of a chemical, and all of a sudden your body is struggling to really try to process and eliminate that. So whether that was a benzoate reaction, I don't know, but definitely something in the hair dye. And the thing is, any sort of benzoate can really disrupt the gut microbiota, and then it can lead to it can sort of cause leaky gut syndrome. That's just a simplified.
And again, this is so important for anybody that's watching and listening to us, because gut health is so vitally important to your well-being, whatever age you're at, you know, whether you're a newborn baby right up until the day that you die, but particularly for perimenopausal and menopausal women, our gut health and our estrobolome, you know, it's so important that we look after the integrity of our gut health, isn't it? For
Absolutely.
health, emotional well-being, physical well-being.
Absolutely. And so I've seen people, you know, especially women, once they approach their 40s, you know, this hormonal storm of you know, all the different hormones doing, you know, all sorts of different things, you know, and they say to me, but, you know, I've always eaten this food all my life and I've never had any problem. And then all of a sudden, you know, not everybody can pinpoint a particular food that has an adverse reaction on them. And that's the beauty of testing. But some people do. They can say, I've always eaten, say, for example, let's say strawberries.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you know, they hit their 40s and their bodies just cannot tolerate strawberries.
Is this because of the progesterone and the estrogen going down, and that then acting as no longer sort of being buffers and working with the, you know, the immune system and the histamines and all the rest of it? Does that come into play, or is there other things?
So there's a lot of different possible theories there. It can just be the liver is just over challenged.
Build up, right?
Exactly. But because the liver is trying to detox the estrogen, so it's working really, really hard. And if the gut microbiome isn't balanced, you know, that's really taxing the liver. And then, yes, you can basically get this sort of inflammatory response in the body.
Yeah,
that can cause all sorts of issues.
Effect, isn't there? And then it could also be that your liver's overtaxed because you've been on some medication, or if you take a Chinese medicine perspective, it's overtaxed with resentment and anger and all those sorts of things. Or, you know, you're self-medicating on chocolate and wine and coffee. And, you know, so again, this is something I share a lot with my clients, is this whole need, as we say, you know, to love on our liver. And, you know, so the liver, the gut health, what we're putting on our skin, all those sorts of things. So yeah, it's all fascinating.
Absolutely. And stress.
Yes.
You know, what I often find, and I know myself, you know, I used to be very resilient to stress. And then I hit my sort of 40s, 45, and, you know, the slightest thing that would go wrong would just overwhelm me. And it's this dance of these hormones, the estrogen, the progesterone, the cortisol, and the insulin, let's bring that in as well, and the thyroid hormones, because they all play a part. So this, you know, long-term stress can really then, you know, precipitate a food intolerance, an adverse reaction to food, you know, when you hit your 40s, definitely.
And this is, like you say, this is things that people just won't realise. And I think we also learn, you know, because I don't want to, you know, just pinpoint the hair dye, but, you know, I used to get my hair done regularly. Now, I've never been a headachy person. And also, you know, I was like 2 and a bit weeks into my elimination diet, you know, so as my body was adapting and, you know, there was lots of things going on in the mix. So I don't want to pinpoint that finger, but you know, it's something I don't normally do, and I decided to do it again. And yes, it's just interesting because how many of us just live thinking, well, that's how I am, that's life, you know, and they don't make the correlation between the stress and their diet, or their diet and the stress, because you know it can work both ways, can't it?
Absolutely, and it's also you know, a lifetime build up.
Yeah.
You know, if you had a bad diet in your teens or your 20s or your 30s, or you know, it's also your alcohol consumption. It all builds up, so it all stacks up. And then when you get this hormonal storm in your 40s, you know, your body is just challenged, and it's trying really hard, and that's where you can get these adverse food reactions.
Which then makes you feel even more blah, and then we all think the menopause is an awful thing to be going through and all the rest of it. So I distracted you. Are there any other, we got to solve that, are there any other kinds of intolerances that there
Let's
could...
have a look. So I've done that one. I have made a list so I don't miss anything out. Okay, so then we come to the let's talk more about these immune antibodies. So, you know, 60 to 70% of our immune system is in our gut. And as we all know, the immune system produces antibodies in response to, let's call them aliens, you know, foreign substances. I'm just going to do this really simplified, you know, because I could talk about this for hours, and so, you know, it can produce antibodies in response to various foods as well. And so these are called these IgG antibodies. And there is a lot of research out there now to say that these IgG antibodies are thought to be responsible for adverse food reactions. And there's some studies even saying that they think that about 45% of the population do actually suffer from a food intolerance. So that's really high.
There was a TV show on about that last night, that it's getting, you know, more and more children.
Yes, absolutely. And so with these sorts of reactions, you can get a delayed response. So you might eat a suspect food on a Monday, and then on the Wednesday or Thursday, you might wake up with a banging headache. You could come out in a rash, itching, but it's also that feeling of, you know, feeling off, just not right, you know, fatigue, low mood, bloating, and then going on, you know, to some other conditions. You know, IBS symptoms can be worse, Crohn's, asthma, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. So, and with these, you can develop a tolerance. So it's not like a proper food allergy where you never ever develop a tolerance.
Right.
And this is, I suppose, the beauty of, you know, if you get yourself tested and then you eliminate these foods and then introduce them back very, very slowly, you can then still tolerate them, probably at a smaller, you know, smaller quantities.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously less frequently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I just wanted to go into really, and I know we've talked about a lot of the different causes, but also, you know, parasites, various infections, candida.
So how would you test for parasites?
It will be a stool test.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And Candida can be tested via a blood spot test or a stool test.
Right. Okay. And just explain what Candida is for some people because they might not be aware.
Okay, so we have a little bit of it in our bodies, and we need some of it in our bodies, but some people can get an overgrowth of this yeast. It's an yeast-like microorganism, and then it can cause real havoc in the body
Right.
once there's an overgrowth.
Mm.
You know, also, I mean, the symptoms, there's a huge list.
Mm.
You know, fatigue, reoccurrent fungal infections like thrush, athlete's foot,
Mm.
headaches, just this, almost like people explain it like, I feel hungover and
Yeah.
I've not had an alcoholic drink.
Mm. Mm.
And there's a whole protocol involved in order to treat that, but it does have to be diagnosed either through a blood spot test or ideally through a stool test.
Okay. Okay. But
Okay.
that's interesting again, isn't it? Because I'm assuming that could also be a cumulative effect, and all of those symptoms that you've just shared could also be the symptoms that a perimenopausal or a menopausal woman feels as well. So again, we come down to, is it candida? Is it low estrogen? Is it low progesterone? Is your cortisol tanked? Are you wired but tired? Is it a food
Yeah.
intolerance? Which again, for me, is why knowing, you know, again, this know your numbers, and where if you can afford to do it, is to get your testing done, because then you know exactly where you are. And for me, I kind of got to a point where I was like, I'm almost on the other side, so I'm going to wait till I'm on the other side, so stepping into my third act, and then I'm going to find where my baseline is and what I'm working from now as a menopausal woman, because I'm never not going to be a postmenopause. I am now a woman in menopause, you know, so there's no post about it. It doesn't stop at any time. It stops when I move on to my next realm, so to speak.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, I'm just going to wait till I'm on the other side. So I'm now post-menopause. You know, I've gone through my 365 days plus, and it's like, here's my benchmark. Where am I at, so that I can continue to be vibrant and, you know, energetic and have the energy that's maybe been lacking for the last sort of 18 months. But I'll throw into the mix, and you've talked about stress, that we have to remember the impact of emotional stress as well
Absolutely.
on our well-being. And a lot of these women who are in super women mode, or, you know, stiff upper lip and just powering through at a time where there's that build up, estrogen's dropping, progesterone's dropping, testosterone may be out, cortisol is that, you know, all the things that you've said, and we keep powering through, is actually we may be having a much more detrimental effect on our long-term well-being and short-term, by not stopping and resting and trying to reduce and getting the support that we need when we're dealing with some of the emotional things that women of our age get to deal with.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is the importance, because some people will ring me up and say, Jolanta, I want you to organise a food intolerance test for me, or a Dutch test. But a standalone test on its own is how can I put it, is not going to be that beneficial. You know, I always like to talk to the person to establish, you know, I'm a nutritionist, and, you know, we are like health detectives. So in that first consultation, we're asking lots of questions, and we're trying to put the jigsaw of that person together, you know, fitting the pieces of what would be the best way to you know, to help this person. And I've lost my train of thought. And so,
Picture
you
based.
know, they might say, oh, I think I've got a food intolerance. But once, you know, I ask the questions, it may actually be that we need to go in a completely different direction,
Yeah.
like maybe a Dutch test, or some other test, maybe a stool test, or maybe no testing. You know, maybe we can work out from the answers that I've got from that person, you know, we can slowly just do it, diet alone, and perhaps supplementation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know for myself, and this happened for me, I know I've discussed it a little bit in the last time we spoke. I'm a numbers person. I like to know what's going on in my body. I like to have it in black and white, because that's then I can make changes towards my health and well-being. If someone was to say to me, you know, Yolanta, you need to drink more water, eat more cruciferous veg, you know, the broccolis,
Yeah.
cabbage, kales, cauliflowers. And if someone did explain to me why I need to do this, I'd probably say, okay, but would I do it? But when I've got it in black and white, and this is the beauty, I mean, I know we're not talking about the Dutch test now, but this is the beauty of the Dutch test, is when you see the results and you can see where eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables is going to really change how the liver breaks down all this excess estrogen safely for it to then be eliminated. You know, and I find with my clients that gives them motivation then to make changes, long-term changes.
I think it was interesting for me because you know, I'm a very intuitive person, and you know, for me it's about gut feel and big picture and all the rest of it, which is why I love the fact now that I can send my clients who need that finer detail to somebody like yourself. But what I found really interesting is when I got my results, it confirmed some of my intuitive thoughts. So that then was like, right, okay, keep trusting yourself, but keep checking in that intuitively you're in the right place. But definitely, and you know, and another example is I did a walk at the weekend. It's the longest I've ever walked. And it was really good because I have numbers. So I have numbers. I know how many steps I did. I know how long we took. I know how I felt at the end of that walk. And it's actually incentivized me because I know emotionally I could cope with it. Mentally, I could cope with it. Physically, I've got things I need to work on. But like you say, I've got it in black and white now. And actually, it's motivational to know that I can choose how to make those numbers move.
Yeah.
And you know, from a positive effect. Okay, so
yeah, sorry.
No, I was going to say talk about the test, but yeah.
And I was just going to say, and you know, you work intuitively, and you had that sort of awareness of what maybe your body wasn't tolerating so well, but a lot of people don't. Like, for example, me, when I was 44 and I was getting all these migraines. Yes, I was perimenopausal. I went to the doctor and they said, yeah, your estrogen's low. This was without any testing, you know, just accept it. And, you know, it wasn't until I had a food intolerance test and it, you know, I found I was intolerant to egg white. Within 3 weeks of eliminating egg whites, I was migraine free. You know, so again, it's this whole thing of hormones, you know, perimenopause, menopause. What is it that's actually causing that symptom?
There's so much, isn't there? And that's the thing when I do my talk. You go through estrogen, you go through progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, hypoglycemia, and you're like, when you look at the symptoms, they're all the same. Which one is it? So you can either choose to come and get tested, you can choose to do an elimination diet, or you can throw your hands up in the air or put your fingers in your ears, you know, and just say, oh, it's all rubbish, I'm not going to do anything about it. But, you know, definitely for me, I can tell this is now my 4th week of following the elimination diet as a result. And my energy it's like all of a sudden, I've just had this huge energy switch and shift. And luckily for me, quite a lot of the foods that came up, I already knew they weren't my friends. And then there were some surprises. So for me, it's been reasonably easy to take out some additional foods, if that makes sense. Whereas I'm quite sure for other people, if they saw the list, they'd be like, well, what am I going to eat?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, so we'll go on to the testing now. So, so the test is really measuring these IgG antibodies. And basically, you know, which foods are causing your body to produce a lot of these IgG antibodies too. And when you get the report, it's like a traffic light system, isn't it? You've got your reds, your ambers, and then your greens are like all the foods that, you know, you can eat freely. And so the test that I use is the food print. Now, they vary in price because you can get tested for 15 foods, 60 foods, 120 foods, 200 plus. And the one that you did, I think, was 120. That's a really comprehensive one.
It was, yeah.
And I just want to point out here that, you know, you might read, there's a lot of controversy around these tests. You know, there have been people who have sent the same blood sample to 3 different labs and had 3 different results. All I can say about that is I'm going by the research papers on PubMed, on Science Direct, that prove and show and discuss the benefits of these tests. You know, how an elimination of these IgG positive foods for a period of 1 or 2 months can significantly decrease symptoms.
Yeah, and I think, what was really interesting for me was my number 1 food, which is dairy. So my number 1 red light. Yeah. Now, to be fair, I didn't need the test to tell me that I'm intolerant to dairy. My body tells, you know, if I have dairy, I have mucus from every orifice. My sinuses block, blah, 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 blah. But it was really interesting to see it. And I also had, so this is my intuitive bit, isn't it? With the, you know, I knew there was a problem with eggs, because whenever I eat, I mean, I used to eat loads of eggs, no problem. Again, as you say, it's this build up. And then recently I noticed if I had an egg, I'd be out like a light. I mean, I would literally need to go and lie down and fall asleep. And surprise, surprise, egg whites came up really high up the list, but not yolks. So I've been eating a few yolks, but obviously not eating the whites. So yes, there's all the PubMed research, but I think as well, when you actually do get quiet and listen to your body, it's confirming actually that, you know, it made perfect sense to me. And what was really interesting, and, you know, my 0 food, my food that was like my number green food, is a food. Now, apologies to any, well, I don't know, no, I'm not apologizing to any vegans, but vegans might not appreciate me saying this. My number 1 food, which I call my happy food, is lamb. And it came up as a 0. So again, I thought that was really interesting, that's something that I've intuitively called my happy food. And the reason being is when I eat it, I feel my mood lifting. I feel like I'm being nourished. It's a meat that I really, enjoy to eat. It's probably one of the best meats we can eat because of the way that sheep are reared compared to cow. So it was really interesting to see that, but also knowing I could trust you, that you'd have made sure that you were only using the best test that you felt was out there on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes into it. Now, something that also comes into it is sometimes if somebody is consuming the same foods on a daily basis, that can trigger an inflammatory response. And that this whole concept of variety, and for example not having the same breakfast every day, not having the same lunch every day, so for example, I had a client and she was having pea protein in her smoothie every single day, and she tested very highly for pea protein, that her body just couldn't tolerate it, and she took it out. I think for about 6 or 7 weeks she felt much better, but she's now slowly introducing it again, but not on a daily basis. And that tolerance can just slowly build up again.
Because that was another interesting one for me, that pea protein came up. And it was fascinating for me because I've never ever been able to tolerate any kind of dairy-free protein powder. And they all have pea protein in them. And soy, I can't tolerate soy either. And again, I know with both of those foods, they're not that. I didn't know the pea protein, but that again was like, now I understand why I cannot stomach, and I literally cannot stomach any kind of dairy-free or vegan shake product. It just bloats me. It makes me feel lethargic, headachy. So it's really fascinating. And I think what I really took away from it is bio-individuality, and just, celery. I'm a juice therapist. I've been juicing celery. Well, here we go with the build up every day. I've been juicing celery every day for probably 7+ years. But there's also somebody telling everybody to drink celery juice every day, isn't there? And I know loads of people are doing really well on it, but I always now think that poor person, because we do, don't we? We go, it's me. It's not the celery juice. No, it's the celery juice in you. You are not. You are not a marriage made in heaven. Trust what your body is telling you.
Absolutely. And so the test, you get a little kit, don't you? And how easy did you find it to do?
I found it really easy to do. It's a heck of a lot of blood though to get. So you're there for quite a while massaging one or two. It isn't like one drop and go. It's a good couple of mils of blood. So that was interesting, especially if you're not somebody that's comfortable around that. But it's just a pinprick and a massage, and just keep dropping. It was easy.
And there are labs that do the test on a full blood draw. So that can be arranged. You can have a phlebotomist come to your home and take a full blood draw. So in some instances that might be easier. And then you get the result comes really quickly. I think yours came in a matter of days, didn't it? And then you get this whole printout I mean, I thought it was a very well produced booklet.
Yeah, I thought it was
very
a great
comprehensive.
booklet. The traffic light system was really easy.
Just bear with me, the sun's really in my eyes.
Yeah, to follow. And then, of course, it was great that I was able to say to you, "Oh, this isn't on the list. What do you think? Can I eat this or can't I eat this?" Because again, another food that I'm intolerant of or sensitive to is white potato. And again, I know that because I know how my body responds when I eat it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, it's that whole thing of just get in tune and listen, but know your numbers as well. Particularly, I think, when we're in this storm that is the perimenopause and the menopause, when there's so many factors. And like you've just said, you know, a lot of the symptoms you shared of food intolerance are also symptoms that might be perimenopausal, menopausal. And, you know, again, I wonder, and I'm not anti anything, I wonder how many women are getting put on HRT when actually it's food intolerance and sensitivity. You know, that's interesting as well, isn't it?
I mean, Mari, in an ideal world, you know, if someone has the money, so I'm talking about £1,000,
yeah,
and they really want to invest in their health, you know, having a full panel of tests done. So I'm talking, so we're talking really perimenopausal, menopausal women today. So I'm talking about a Dutch test, you know, because that will give you the numbers. It will show how the liver is detoxing the estrogen. It will show you testosterone levels, cortisol levels. That, you know, cortisol is so, you know, that could be the trigger for night sweats, flushes. You know, check your blood sugars, because again, that when your blood sugars drop at night, you'll wake up sweating.
That's been one of the biggest things to work on.
Thyroid, that's another big one, you know, because again, an underactive thyroid can show, you know, the same symptoms as what we class as the menopausal symptoms.
Yes, this is the thing, isn't it? It's the
So, you know, in an ideal world, you know, and in food intolerance testing, you know, if someone does have £1,000 to spend on their health, you know, you're going to get your numbers, you're going to know, you're going to have the clarity of what is going on in your body. Because otherwise you might be changing things that you read in books, or, you know, things that you've watched, but you might be stabbing in the dark because it's not personalized for your body. And that's when my health turned around, is when, I mean, I was in a position to afford these tests. I had about four tests done, and I saw the numbers. I saw exactly where I needed to, you know, what I needed to target. My health turned around.
Massively. So really going back, because obviously we're going to talk about the Dutch test, and, you know, on another day. So once somebody's had their food intolerance sensitivity test done, we recommend 4 to 8 weeks of eliminating all of those foods and just seeing how they
feel. There's studies been done, scientific studies been done, that once we eliminate these positive IgG foods, these antibodies start to really decrease after about a month.
Right.
So again, you know, if someone wants a food intolerance test, and there are labs out there where you can just phone up, order one, they send you one in the kit, you send it off, you get a booklet, and you know, you do usually have a phone number that you can ask for advice. But I would always say work with a nutritionist or a naturopath, you know, because the thing is, when you start to eliminate some of these foods, you still want to keep a balanced diet. You don't want to then cause yourself other issues because you're then becoming a deficient in a certain vitamin or mineral. So when I, for example, sell my testing packages, I always say, look, I really advise a consultation. You get email support, and then sort of a few sort of weeks, usually about 6 to 8 weeks down the line, we have a follow-up consultation, just so that, you know, I leave that person with a plan for the future.
Definitely. And I think that's the key thing, isn't it, is that people feel empowered, but also that they're supported. And because you know, it's a big thing, isn't it, learning how to sort of eat again, or you know, and nourish yourself without swinging from one thing to the other. So I'm really conscious, because as always we've almost spoken for a whole hour. So I am taking the Dr. Chatterjee approach to podcasting and connecting with those people who I really admire and who influence and share great stuff. Is there any last sort of words you'd want to say at the moment on this subject before obviously we rearrange our next meeting?
Okay, so I just want to offer just something that I just want to do, because, you know, 2020 has been pretty tough. Hey, you know, and I really want to help people to enter the new year, 2021, you know, stronger, more resilient, more vibrant. But that means we need to start now. You know, we need to really look at our health. So if there's anybody watching this, you know, what I'm doing for the month of November is I am offering 20% off my testing packages.
Brilliant. Right.
You know, and that puts you in good stead. You can have the test consultation with me, and we can work towards, you know, improving any health issues, so you can start 2021 strong.
Absolutely.
Vibrant.
Perfect.
Radiant.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because it's Halloween. We're recording this, and this will go out today or tomorrow, and we're recording this just before Halloween and the 1st of November, which in the original traditional Celtic calendar is New Year.
Yay.
So there you go. We're actually doing New Year before New Year, but you know, if you think about it, everyone always goes, oh, you know, abs are made in the winter. Well, so's our health and vitality. So this is the time, if we think about the season, let's get rid of what no longer serves us. Let's go deep. Let's nourish. Let's rebuild our foundation, our gut health, so that we emerge in the spring beautiful and bountiful. So no, absolutely. I shall be sharing that, and I really look forward to knowing all the other radiant, vital women and men, because obviously Jolanta works with men as well. This isn't, and with younger people, to support us all back to vibrant health and vitality. So great offer. Thank you as always for joining me. And we will be talking very soon when we'll be sharing the results of my Dutch test. So thank you for your time today.